This is our Caterpillar 3208 engine, and here is our f350 frame. Now that the weather's finally warmed up enough, we can get some more progress done on the cat swap. I started building a thermostat housing for it. I got to make the little crossover tube here. I just basically took the old thermostat housing and set it on the scanner on my printer, and then made up the bracket on Fusion 360, and it worked out perfectly. I got to weld on cut out the corner and weld on a barbed fitting there for the hose, but otherwise it should work just fine, and it didn't turn out too bad in my opinion. I got a pulley for a V-belt pulley for a power steering pump here. I got to make some mounts for that, but mostly I need to have this sitting in the truck so I can see what my clearance is like for everything, because at this point, if I just mount a bunch of stuff on there, I'm gonna have to change it later because of the frame rails and such. I also swapped around the pickup tube for the oil pan. I turned the oil pan around so that way it goes down at the back, so we have room for the cross member in the front. I got some filters for our turbos. I got all of our cat filters. I picked up a twin disc clutch for the engine because the other clutch that the engine came with didn't fit the transmission, so of course it's kind of important to be able to connect our engine to our transmission. But really, there isn't a lot more I can do on this engine at this point until I get it mounted in the truck, which is today's job, I guess, is getting the truck ready. I got to pull the cab off, pull the engine, pull the transmission, so that way I can get this engine in the truck. Okay, so here's our cat swap donor truck, and as you can see, it still has an engine and it still has a cab on it, but let's get that off of there. Oh, well, I guess that didn't work. I guess I actually have to do the work. I've pulled so many of these engines out of here, so it's not really a big deal. It's easier to pull the engine in trans with the cab off. So I gotta remove our brake booster, our steering, our wiring, I removed the grill and the rad and all that stuff already. Not a huge deal. Some of the plumbing for the heat and AC and stuff like that. And then, yeah, mostly just some the shift linkage for the transmission. And then I gotta pull up the carpet. I got the seats out already. Yeah, I gotta get it. I got cab mount bolts there. Otherwise, it's honestly maybe an hour less work to get the cab pulled off. And then we're ready to start building cross members. So we got a cab mount bolt right there, and we got one right there. We'll see if we can pull those out without any heating or cutting. Now with the front bolts removed, we got to remove the ones in the cab here. So it's dark in here, but pull the carpet back. There's a rubber plug on each side, and under that rubber plug, I need a screwdriver to pull that out. Under that plug is another bolt. Look at all this garbage from under the seat. Hey, there's a loonie. Well, that's a score. Can someone please explain to me why the driver's side of the truck has 15/16 headed bolts and the passenger side has 13/16 headed bolts? Like, is it different body mounts on the driver's side? I don't understand. Well, this front cab mount bolt is not wanting to come out, it's just spinning. So we're going to use the thermal persuader to just cut the head right off the bolt. I'm also going to go ahead and remove that headache rack because it's like touching the back window, and I see a high likeliness of me breaking it out when I pull the cab, and I don't want to smash that back window because then I got to replace it, and that's a whole bunch more work that I just don't want to have to do. So one thing that takes a bit of getting used to, because I almost only work on diesels, right? But this is a gasser engine. So of course when I cut, remove, disconnect these fuel lines, there's gas everywhere, the tank's full of gas, and that's a fire hazard, and I'm just not used to that, because most of the time I don't care, I'll go ahead and use an angle grinder to cut a fuel line when there's diesel in it, but not with gas, right? It's a lot more dangerous. Bulk of this job is done. I got the cab pulled. That went great. The engine transmissions pulled, also easy. And now we have our bare frame, which got some cleaning up to do, of course, but this frame is in amazing shape. There's some like barely surface rust, but pretty much rust free. I just got to pull this box, and most of the time, 99% of the time, these box bolts don't come out. So I actually just torched the top of the bolts off, but this one's got plywood in it. So first step, I guess I got to actually rip this plywood out of here, and then I can get at the top of the bolts. I'll also grab a garbage can and throw out some more stuff, but yeah, I guess I'll take a pry bar and rip all that plywood off and then get to pulling this box. But you torch the 6 or 8 box bolts, you remove the fuel filler neck and then the wiring at the back, and the box just lifts right off. Now that we have all 8 bolts cut, I just gotta do the wiring and the fuel filler here. These fuel fillers, they got tiny little bolts. They're like, I think like a 6mm socket. Oh, someone replaced this with Robertson head screws. So I guess I'm just using a screwdriver on those. We can confirm the box is loose because we can just lift the corner right up easily. There's our truck box up in the air. Just gotta set it on some tires for now. And just like that, we have a bare frame. It's not too big of a job. It can be done pretty quickly, but you know, once you've fought with the bolt enough, just cut it off. Way easier that way. I just gotta cut those little clips now, and those all knock out pretty easily. When I bolt the box back on, I'll end up just bolting and nutting it. But yeah, gotta pull the fuel tank out of there so it's safe for welding, and remove some more bits of wiring and exhaust. I think while it's here though, I'm gonna pressure wash it. It's warm enough today to do some pressure washing, so I can wash it, then roll it back into the shop so we can get to some fab work. So this is the first time I've ever used my transfer pump for gasoline. I just disconnected that guy from the fuel filter, hooked it into the pump, and emptying the fuel tank into jugs right now. Works really well actually, because pulling a fuel tank that's full of fuel really sucks. So I really like to empty it all out into jugs before I drop the tank. Well, this beater Jeep is the only gas vehicle I have, so I guess all that fuel out of that truck is gonna go into this. Otherwise, I guess I can run it in the welder and the pressure washer. I got tired of slowly siphoning jugs, so I just run the hose right into the fuel tank. I haven't found any water in that yet, so it should be pretty clean, hopefully. I guess we'll see. You can see we really don't have a lot of ceiling clearance in here to do this, but I managed to get it done, and there we have our 3208. There is our engine sitting on the crossmember, how we want it to be. Lining it up, I can see that, you know, I need to go back a little bit more than this because we're gonna have to have room for the radiator and intercooler if we have one, fans and all that. But we have this crossmember here that is getting in the way of the oil filters on this side. I knew it would, like this isn't a surprise. So I was saying I really have to get rid of that crossmember and the starter over here because this engine's way too high. Unless we're gonna put a 12-inch body lift on the cab, this engine height isn't gonna work. I need to remove that crossmember entirely, which means building a different track bar mount because that one obviously hooks up to that crossmember, rerouting brake lines. And yeah, I'll end up basically building a crossmember up here, big sturdy crossmember up here, that holds the front of the engine and kind of does exactly what that one was supposed to do. Now, I kind of got to figure out where the engine's going to be, because obviously wherever it's going to be how we line up our transmission, and we need that to work for the shifter, right? It kind of gets to a point where I just have to start chopping at stuff, because if I'm like, oh, well, maybe I can work around this, I'm never going to get anything done. What I need is to have the engine basically sitting exactly where it's going to be, so I can measure up and find out what cross members I need to build. And it was interesting because people were telling me, you can't even fit a 3208 in there. It won't clear between these shock mounts. Look how much clearance we have. I guess the next step is for me to just put this on the engine stand and get to chopping. This cross member here is mounted by, we got 3 rivets there. That there's a tab coming out from the frame. So 1, 2, 3. Got one down there and one there, one on the underside, 2 on the underside. Yeah, anyways, it looks like probably 5 or 6 on either side that I just got to torch out and then knock out with a hammer, and obviously cut that guy out. If you're gonna use a torch, you're gonna save time in the long run just to go ahead and clean your torch tip first, because you'll end up using less cutting gas this way. You'll make a cleaner cut, and you'll waste less time trying to get the material hot because your torch tip won't be plugged up. Anyone who has had to use a dirty torch before will know exactly why I'm saying this. And just like that, we have our cross member removed. That was a lot more of a challenge than I had originally anticipated. It involved cutting it up into a whole bunch of pieces and smashing the bits out, because it's actually riveted in there and welded to the inside of the frame. But anyways, it has been removed. So now I just gotta, I guess, line up the engine and see where I'm gonna put the engine mounts. That engine fits in there quite nicely, actually. I'm pretty impressed by that. I got lots of clearance all the way around. Here's where the steering box mounts. We come back here and the frame gets parallel again. So that's likely where I'm going to end up mounting the front cross member and engine mount too. So that way I'll still have room for the steering box. And then the rear engine mounts, they're gonna kind of mount inside of the frame here. Now that I got this kind of where I want it to be, I got to do some measurements. So in between these frame rails where I want the front cross member engine mount to be is 34 inches across. I want the engine centered in the middle. It's gonna have to, basically the level I want the engine at is right about where it is. So these brackets are gonna have to come out from the frame about 2 inches. They're gonna come out 2 inches, go down the length of the bracket, and then go straight across. And then I'm gonna have it basically all boxed in, and that should probably do the trick. So I'll do some measurements and then draw up on CAD the design that I'm gonna wanna run with. For the back of the engine here, where I have these brackets already, I have to center the back bell housing. I'll lift it up with the jack and kind of get it centered the way I want it to be. And then I'm going to, same thing, measure the distance and the height. Write that down to also figure out how I'm gonna need this back bracket to be laid out. Important thing to note is actually when you're mounting an engine in a vehicle, they are not designed to be ran parallel or perfectly level. You actually want the entire engine tilted back a few degrees. This helps all the oil drain out of the rocker covers and back into the oil pan properly. You can look up different engines and see about how many degrees they're supposed to be tilted back. I got a big old plate, a 1/4 inch steel here. I'm gonna knock off probably about 20 inches of it. It's 5 foot long. But yeah, probably about 20 inches of it. I bought this just for projects like this. And that's what I'm gonna be building those engine mounts and cross members out of.